Hello there and welcome to the first ever Tipstars podcast. My name's Matt Houghton. I'm one of the co-founders of Tipstars, along with Chris Sowerby, who you'll hear from later on in the show. This month we'll be kicking off with an interview with Chris, so that you can get a good feel for exactly what Tipstars is if you're not currently aware of the concept. Even if you are, it'll act as a nice refresher. After that, we have an interview with Adam Cheng, who is the tipster behind a football service called The Professional. This is actually the #1 rated football service on Tipstars for 2019. So if you like your football, that should be of real interest to you. Later on, we also have a segment with Chris who'll look at some of the best performing tipping services of 2019. And then we'll finish off with a look ahead to October's Sport in Action, which I'll run through. This being our first podcast, it'd be great to hear any feedback you have. You can get in touch with us by contacting Chris at tipstars.tips. And yeah, enjoy the show. Right, so the next section of this month's Tipstars podcast is about Tipstars tips and tricks, so how to make best use of the website. Tipstars co-founder Chris Sowerby will be leading this section each month. As it's our very first podcast, this month we're going to do it as a bit of an introduction to the website. So Chris, if you could start by telling us exactly what is Tipstars?
Sure, Matt. So Tipstars came about from my experience both as a punter and more latterly as a reviewer, really trying to provide a service to punters where they can have some independent clarification and confidence in the results that they're seeing for a tipster actually being genuine and accurate. So the website is built in such a way that we do show obviously the advised odds and the advised stakes that tipsters produce. We don't add in any best odds guaranteed. We see that as being a bonus rather than something that's available to everyone. If you can get it, all well and good, but we see that as a bonus. We take all of the Rule 4 deductions off. So what you will see, in my opinion, is a more conservative and potentially more realistic result of what someone can achieve with a tipster. In reality, they'll probably get somewhere between what they see on Tipstars and what they see on the tipster's own site, if they can get bulk, if they can get enhanced places, etc. So we're trying to show the results in a way that will be available to the majority of people. We also show results to Betfair SP for horse racing tipsters only, and we show it all to 1 point to win. So regardless of what the bet might be, if it's each way or a 5-point win or whatever, we ignore that and we show each tip to 1 point to win to Betfair SP. Again, that gives people an indication of what they could achieve if they can't get bets on with the bookmakers, which we know is becoming harder and harder for people. But you generally get the bets on at Betfair SP at a reasonable level. So again, it's another source of information, the tipsters that are actually making profits to Betfair SP as well.
And presumably you can rank the tipsters by a number of different factors?
Yep, the league table that we have on there, which comes out at the end of each month, you can rank by the Tipstars Index, which is the measure I prefer because it actually levels the playing field. So it takes into account the level of stake, the number of tips, etc., and gives everyone a ranking based on our algorithm. I can't tell you what's exactly included in that because obviously that's part of our intellectual property, but it does level the playing field and should give you the ability to compare tipsters with different styles, different staking plans, but on a level playing field. The league table can also be ranked by pure profit. So regardless of what the advised odds, advised stake are, if you're not interested in that, then pure profit can be your measure. Return on investment, return on capital, or a win strike rate. You can also sort the table by market. So if you only wanted to see football tipsters, you can have a league table that shows you just the football tipsters. So it's very interactive, very user friendly, and you can chop and change it to suit your own betting style or your own information that you're looking for.
Okay. I think from my point of view that's really useful generally, because finding a good service for your portfolio is not necessarily just choosing the most profitable one. Obviously there are different services will suit different people. I know one example you said about before is a service called iBet, which makes a lot of money, but that comes from an awful lot of tips, doesn't it?
It does, and we're talking about thousands of tips a month. I did a blog on it. It's on the Tipstars blog page if anyone wants to read it. I did a day as an iBet follower. It is a full-time job if you wanted to follow them. They do make money, you can't argue with that. The results are there, the results speak for themselves, but you've got to be sat in front of your computer from pretty much 11 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, 7 days a week, not 5. And if you can do that, you will make the money, but that's not going to be feasible for many people at all. Once you're not following all of the tips, you build in an element of risk that you're going to hit more losers than winners. It's more fundamental for me than that as well. It's not just about the volume of tips, it's simple things like the timing of tips. There's no point following a tipster that says their tips out at 10 o'clock in the morning if you're at work and can't access the tips. You find one that sends them out the evening before or 7 o'clock in the morning, or find a time and a tipster that fits your lifestyle. And to help that, on the Tipstars site, each tipster has a profile page, and on the profile page we list the normal time that the tips come out for that tipster. So there's a whole raft of things that people should be considering when they're considering following a service. You're right, it's not just about profit. Yes, we want profitable services, and that's profitable in the long term, but we need to look at all of the factors, and hopefully Tipstars pulls together a lot of that information in one place for people.
Tipstars, we officially launched it the start of January this year, so been going 9 months now, and I think I'm right in saying there are now over 200 tipsters on the website.
Yeah, at the moment, live tipsters at the moment is 200. We've had tipsters that we started with who have now fallen by the wayside. Indeed, in 9 months we've had tipsters who have come and gone, and that's another factor. When you're looking at adding tipsters to a portfolio, really look at how long they've been about. New tipsters, I always think, are worth a watching brief. Again, use Tipstars, all of the results go on there. 80% of the results are in real time, so as soon as a race is finished the results are updated, as soon as a match is finished the results are updated. There are a few which we have to do a little bit more with, but by the end of each day every tipster has the day's tips results on there. I personally would be reluctant to follow a new tipster until I'd monitored it for a good few months at least. Again, that's personal preference, but you do run the risk if you have no data to go from, you have no experience. But again, use Tipstars, the information's free, it's available.
And to be clear with the tips, every tip for each service is included, so multiple bets, anti-post bets?
Absolutely everything. So if the tipster sends out an email to his or her members, that tip gets included. Obviously the results appear once the tip is concluded, so an anti-post bet won't show on there until the event has actually run and been resulted. But yeah, we cover everything, so, and it's a warts and all service. We don't sugarcoat any of the results, they are exactly what the tipster has predicted.
Okay. I know, as well as the main ranking table, you can drill down further into each individual tipster. What sort of stuff's on the individual profile pages?
So for each tipster we have 3 tabs on the page. The first one is a profile, so there's a short written profile of the tipster, and then we have some information for each one, things such as their recommended starting bank, the average number of tips per month, the average odds of their tips, the average stake. So all of the information people would want to see when they're making a decision on whether or not a tipster is right for them. The second tab is a detail tab, so you can then drill down by month, by year, or by lifetime on Tipstars to see all of their results, literally line by line, so every single tip that they've put out. And at the top of the page is a summary for that month, year, or lifetime, which will show you their profit and loss, the average profit and loss per month, the return on investment, return on capital, strike rate, etc. Lots of information on there, and really you can dice it however you want to see it. And the final tab is a summary, so it shows you month by month what the profit and loss was, month by month what their Tipstars index was, and there's some graphs on there that show you their cumulative profit and loss figure and the number of winning months compared to losing months.
Okay. I know personally I really like the graphs on there because you can get a feeling for how steady the journey is, if you like, any big peaks and troughs, or if it's a more stable service. So that's particularly useful, I find. As well as the main website, there's also the mailing list, which is completely free to join as well. What sort of emails do people get sent from that?
So the standard ones, each month we have a newsletter which goes out that obviously focuses on the best performing tipster from the previous month, and some other regular articles in there. We have some Matt's musings, we have some hints and tips, we have some articles. We introduced the new tipsters who are coming on board from next month, so that's quite a useful document for most people to see each month. We also do a weekly signposts email, so there I try and highlight 3 or 4 of the services that have performed particularly well during the last week. With 200 odd tipsters on there, it's quite difficult for people to always see what's performing well and what's not. But because I see every tip that goes through the service, I have a good feel for what's performing and what's not. So that's just to signpost people to some services they might want to monitor. On top of that, we have some ad hoc emails that go out. If there's any news or offers that we think are particularly good, then we'll send those out. And I should have added, in the monthly newsletter we do have offers from tipsters as well, which are unique to Tipstars, so you won't find them anywhere else, be that 3 months, reduced costs, whatever. So well worth watching out for.
Yeah, definitely. And as I say, it's completely free to sign up to the mailing list. If you've not done it already, you can do so via the website tipstars.tips. I guess the only other point to touch on this month is the monthly featured tipster. How do you select that?
They actually select themselves, because we actually use the top performing tipster from the month before, and then we sort of focus on them for the next month. We did start initially by trying to vary it by looking at different tipsters, but it became very difficult to make a decision on who we should use each month, and keep it fair to everyone who's on Tipstars. So at the moment we focus on the best performing tipster from the previous month.
Okay, great. I think that's a good overview for our first episode. And if anyone would like to contact you for more information, Chris, what's your email address?
It's simply chris@tipstars.tips.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hey there, Matt here. The next section is an interview with Adam Cheng, who runs the professional tipping service. This took place in the pub. We were having a catch-up over a couple of drinks before Adam went off to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to watch the Tottenham Bayern Munich game, which, as it turned out, was a pretty entertaining affair, Tottenham going down 7-2. That does mean, unfortunately, that the tip Adam provides in this segment is a little bit out of date and is shortened in price from 12-1 to 13-2. However, we still think it's worth a bet for the reasons that Adam will explain in this segment. The only other thing to note is that, as I say, this was recorded in the pub, so there's a bit of background noise, but you should be able to hear everything myself and Adam say. So, enjoy. Right, for this month's Tipstars interview segment, I'm joined by Adam Cheng, who runs a football service called The Professional. Adam, hi.
Hello.
If you could just give us a run through of what the service entails.
Yeah, so it's a number of tips every week, average between 5 and 10 a week, I'd say, fixed odds, and then maybe one spread bet per week. All sort of high level football, Premier League, Championship, Champions League, Europa, the odd lower league bet, but yeah, all sort of liquid markets, mostly 90-minute market, total goals, total corners, team corners, and then some player stuff in there as well. So yeah, it's going well so far. It's quite good fun as well, because you get to watch quite a lot of it take place, because a lot of it's on the live televised game. So yeah, all good so far this season.
Seems to be quite stats based. Is that your background? Quite stats influenced?
Yeah. Well, I mean, primarily I'm bookmaker based. So I worked for a sort of high end bookie for 10 years, and then I moved to a football stats company called Squawker. Worked there for a year or two, and then just decided to sort of go my own way, punting and doing this tipping. and yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, cool. As part of this monthly section, we like to get the tipster to provide us with a tip. What have you got for us?
So in terms of if you want a long-term bet for the season, we've already backed it. It's Robert Lewandowski, top Champions League scorer. I think it's 12 to 1 at the moment. Each way, so it's a tremendous each way bet because you've got 4 places, a quarter of the odds, so you've got 3 to 1 the place. So 3 to 1 he gets in the top 4 scorers. There's a variety of reasons why it's such a good bet. I mean, he was off the mark in their first game against Red Star. Basically, these bets, if you look at the opponents, that's the key to this, because there's obviously a limited amount of fixtures in the Champions League. Sort of, you've got 6 in the group stage, and then a knockout game. So there's a finite number of games, and you're just looking for someone that's prolific and that will score against weak opposition. So if you look at their group, they've got Red Star, Olympiacos, and Spurs in their group. So 6 games against teams which you would expect Bayern Munich to score a number of goals in. Yeah. Spurs, whose defence isn't great so far this season, and then Olympiacos and Red Star. If you look at that compared to the other market leaders in this market, so Messi, Barcelona, they've got Inter Milan and Dortmund in their group. Also with Messi, he's favourite, but he possibly is getting to a stage of his career now where it's time's catching up with him. Like I think he's 30, I'm 33 or 34 now.
Yeah, something like that.
And he didn't play. He got taken off at half time in the penultimate Barcelona game. And then last game he was rested completely. So I just wonder whether he is going to be playing every minute of every game like he always has done. Also, Barcelona are not playing well at the moment. They're not scoring as many goals as they have done, and they're just not. And also, they might even go out of the group. They drew with Dortmund in their first game. With Inter and Dortmund, they're definitely not guaranteed to get through the group. Whereas Bayern Munich will do. Ronaldo, second favourite. Juventus don't score a lot of goals.
No, we didn't score many last year.
No, they didn't score. They never have done. They just find a way to win. Yeah. They're going to win 1-2-0, and Ronaldo might get one, but he's not going to. They're not. You very rarely see Juve winning 5-6-0, whereas Bayern Munich can win 4-5-0.
Yeah.
And so that's potentially a negative for Ronaldo. He's also getting to the end of his career, and then you've got I would say, apart from Messi and Ronaldo, Lewandowski's next best, and that's borne out over the last few years of Champions League top scorers every season as well. Like Lewandowski's come basically behind those two.
Yeah.
On I think it's like 4 out of the last 6 seasons. He came second to Messi last year when we were on that.
Yeah.
With 8, Messi got 12, and the third was like someone with 6.
Yeah.
Year before that, I think he was injured for quite a lot of the season. Year before that, he came, I think, second behind Ronaldo. Year before that, he was third behind Ronaldo and Messi. It's just a pattern that there's no reason why it won't continue this season. And hopefully, if Messi and Ronaldo don't score the goals they have done previously, then he's got a great chance of winning it. But we're in it really for the each way part, and then the win part will be a big bonus.
Well, 12 to 1's a nice profit even place, isn't it?
Exactly, that's what I mean. So you've got 3 to 1 the place, and it's a really, really good bet. I mean, there's other ones in there like Aguero, Salah, maybe Harry Kane, but I just think that he scores a vast majority of Bayern Munich's goals. He's on penalties. Yeah, it's just a good bet.
Yeah, and as you say, last year came second, and that was with Bayern getting knocked out last 16.
Exactly. Yeah. So they've got every chance of getting further than that this season, and he'll be the main man again. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's the selection this month. Lewandowski each way, Champions League top scorer, around sort of 12 to 1. And take a look at the professional if you're after a football service. It's actually the number 1 football service on Tipstars for 2019 by quite a distance as well. And I think there's a profit guarantee with the service as well, isn't there, Adam?
Yeah, that's right. If the service doesn't make 50 points profit over the season, every penny that you've paid over the entire season in subscription costs gets refunded to you in one lump sum. That's pretty good.
I think it's pretty much unheard of. Last season as well, we had a profit guarantee too, and no one got refunded because everyone made a good amount of money. So, if you're interested in that, you can find more information on the website. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Time now to take a look at the best performing tipsters from last month. So in September, the overall accolade goes to Value Wins from the Betfan platform of tipsters. This is based on our unique Tipstars ranking system. It takes into account all factors, not just profit. In September, Value Wins made over 210 points profit to predominantly 3 and 5 point stakes. This came on the back of a run of 6 months of relatively small losses after they'd previously hit almost 700 points in total since joining Tipstars back in March of 2018. September saw just 32 selections, which is about the norm for the service, so it's not heavy in terms of the volume of bets, and that produced 7 winners for a strike rate of just under 22%. The average odds tend to hover around about 7, 8, 9 to 1, that sort of mark. Can be higher, can be lower, but that's your average. Return on investment during the month was just under 170%, so a really good return on your money. It has shown to be a service that can produce some really bumper months like September, and it can also have a few months where it might make some losses. None of the losses we've seen since it joined Tipstars have been that severe, and on the whole it's shown an upward trend in its profitability. Over half the months have been in profit since March 2018, and it was that run of 6 months between March 2019 and August 2019 which was pretty much the only downward trend we've seen from the service. The beauty of the Tipstars League system is that if you go onto the website, you can actually look at the results based on any number of criteria you want. So you can look at it from the index point of view, which is where I tend to concentrate because it does produce a more level playing field for the tipsters because it takes into account all of the attributes. You can sort by points profit, return on investment, return on capital, and you can also divvy it up by market, so looking just at football tipsters, for example. So if we have a look back in September at some of these other measures, one of the standout numbers is total points profit, and in September 2,720 points profit for Super Lucky 15, another service from the Betfan platform. This service uses Lucky 15s, Lucky 31, Lucky 63s. In September, it managed within 1 week to hit 5 out of 6 twice on Lucky 63s, hence the big wins. It's not unusual to see big wins like this from this service, but you do need to be aware that in between times you can see some fairly significant losses as well. And overall, since this service joined Tipstars, we've seen it just about break even with some huge swings one way and another. In terms of the football tipsters in September, we saw both BankerBet's value picks and BankerBets fill the top 2 slots based on the Tipstars index ratings. These 2 services both come from the same stable. You can get a membership which incorporates both for a reduced fee. Both services operate at the lower end of the market, so average odds round about evens or just below for BankerBets, evens or just over for the value picks. They're not aimed at £10 a point punters. These are really aimed at much bigger stakes. The competition amongst the greyhound tipsters we now have on Tipstars, of which there are 9, is quite intense. In September it was a newcomer, RM Greyhound Tips from Tipsters Empire, that led the way in terms of the Tipstars index. In terms of total points profit, you're looking at Greyhound Insider, but there's lots of opportunities within the Greyhound tipsters and well worth a look at the figures on the site. Whilst it's interesting to take a look at who's performed well each month, for me the more important part of the table is when we look at 2019 as a year to date. So this is services that have got at least 3 months completed results on Tipstars, and top of the standings, if you look at January to September inclusive, is Charlie Mears Racing from Tipster Street, closely followed by QF Value Tips from Betting Gods, and then Greyhound Insider. I just want to say a few more words about Charlie Mears Racing. When he first joined Tipstars, his first month was actually a loss. Not a significant loss, but a loss nonetheless. He followed that up with 2 exceptionally good months in May and June, before another loss in July. Profit again in August and another loss in September. So you can see that although he sits top of the ratings in terms of overall tipsters this year, it's far from profit all the way. And Charlie does post a constant reminder on his daily email that the service is playing at longer odds. It is an each way service, and there will be times when there are losing months. But what we should be looking for from any tipster is that long-term profitability, and that's certainly what we're seeing at the moment from Charlie Mears Racing. I'd like to make a special mention for a couple of other services as well this month. USA Racing Club, another BetFan service. September was its 20th consecutive month of profit since joining Tipstars. And if we're looking at long-term profitability, then this is a service that really ticks the boxes. This is a service that operates only on Thursdays to Sundays and has an average number of tips per month of around about the 30 mark. So again, it's not a heavy service. There's not following hundreds and hundreds of tips to get the profit. Indeed, the return on investment since joining Tipstars is over 37%. Now, over the long term, that is a remarkable achievement. We would normally expect a decent service to be making somewhere around about 10% over the long term, so 37% is an exceptional performance. The other service I wanted to mention is one that's caught my eye over the last couple of months, and that's the 6-point plan from BetInfo24. This is 3 tips per day, 3, 2 and 1 point stakes. Shown some really good returns in the last 2 months, and as I record this today, just seen the results for the 1st of October. 3 out of 3 winners for another 23.5 points profit. Still relatively early days in the life of this service on Tipstars, but certainly one that I think you should be making a note of and certainly keeping an eye on over the next couple of months. The other option that's available on the league table is to actually rank the services against Betfair SP. This relates obviously only to the horse racing services and is based on 1 point to win on all of their selections. We ignore multiples and each way bets are taken as the win element only. In September, the top performing to Betfair SP was Statman Daily with a very impressive 109 point profit to Betfair SP from just 1 point per bet stakes. We didn't introduce the Betfair SP recording until March of this year, but if we look at the period March to September, we've got Vision Racing, Betting Gods service, sitting at the top with an average monthly profit of just over 26.5 points. Statman Daily, who was top in September, sits in third, and in between those we've got the Bookie's Enemy, a long-standing service from Betting Gods, which is also over an average of 25 points a month to Betfair SP. We would have a very long podcast and you'd get even more bored of listening to my voice if I tried to cover every element of what you can see from the tables. So all I can suggest is that you head on over to tipstars.tips, go to the league tables page and have a look for yourself. Dice it up in the way that best suits you, what you're looking for from a service, and make your own decisions. I'll be back with some more information next month in terms of the top performing tipsters. Thank you.
Hey, it's Matt again to take you through to the end of this month's podcast. While Chris's speciality is in reviewing betting services, mine's in running them. I love sport and make a decent income from my own bets. So each month in this final section, I'm going to look ahead to the upcoming sporting events. I've also got a competition for you to enter, but I'll save that until last. And yes, that is my way of blackmailing you into paying attention. So for me, October is all about 3 things. My birthday, the national hunt season, which is jumps racing, and the time of year when football really starts getting interesting. Granted, my birthday may not be of much interest to you, but do feel free to send any cakes or bottles of booze to the address on the Tipstars website. As for the sport, football is my first love, and I like to turn this into a bit of a money spinner by putting together an anti-post guide called Premier Bets every summer. I also like to go against the grain with my selections. After all, that's often the best way of finding betting value. And this summer I was laughed at when people saw my prediction of Manchester United to finish 9th. Turns out I was probably being overly generous to United. My advice, if you're ever walking down the street and see Ollie at the wheel, is to get out of the way as quickly as possible. It's looking like there's a few other pearlers in this season's edition as well, and although the odds have obviously moved since the summer, it may be of interest to you. As you've taken the time to listen to this podcast, I'm happy to send you a copy on the house. Just email me at matt@tipstars.tips if you would like a copy. In addition to my own bets, It will come as no surprise that I'm also a big fan of Adam Chain's service, The Professional. You obviously heard from Adam earlier in the show, and hopefully that piqued your interest. As I said during the interview, it's the #1 football service on Tipstars for 2019, and holds that position by a fair old margin. On top of that, it also comes with a minimum 50-point profit guarantee, and that's based on the Tipstars independently proofed track record. Our job at Tipstars is nothing if not to point you in the direction of the best services out there. So if you like football betting, do look it up on the Tipstars website or email me for more details. However, if football isn't your thing, perhaps national hunt racing is. If so, then you probably enjoy this time of year just as much as I do. For me, the mud and thunder of Cheltenham beats the pomp and bluster of Ascot any day. I also happen to be a jumps tipster myself, as part of a long-running and very profitable service called the Syndicate. That one's actually both a flat and jump racing service, and there don't actually appear to be many jumps-only services on the market. But one that we would recommend based on our Tipstars results is called Jumping for Profit. It's a relatively low-priced service that we've been proofing since February last year, and it's made a very healthy 84.5 points profit in that time. If you'd like to give it a try, then again, you can find out more information on tipstars.tips by seeking out the service's profile page. That's just about all for this month, but before you go, I did promise you a competition, so here it is. On Monday, England's football team are away to Bulgaria. The qualification campaign so far has been as easy as ever, but the tedium has at least been lifted by Gareth Southgate's men scoring a bucket load of goals. The question is, how many will they score against Bulgaria? Send your answers to matt@tipstars.tips and a winner will be selected from the correct answers. The winner will get a 4-month subscription to football service The Professional, completely free of charge. Right then, I think that's just about it for this month. Thank you for listening, do send in your feedback and best of luck with your betting this October.